Willis Otieno, advocate, is here with us this morning, and he is saying the math is not mathing. But first of all, a very good morning to you, Willis.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Yes.
I'm all right.
Sad morning.
It is.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
But we pray that God rest the soul of our brother in peace.
Amen.
And to give the family strength to go through this trying moment.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. Truth. Kabisa. City went to Algeria. Last time you heard in a different country.
Yes.
City's gone to Algeria, and his proverb is an interesting one. And I'm dying to know if you're going to use the word that everybody has used this morning. But okay, let's hear what the proverb is, and then we'll hear your interpretation.
Yes, the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. Not Algeria Republic.
Indeed.
The people's.
People's Democratic Republic. Thank you, Dennis. Speak kindly or refrain from talking.
Yes. This proverb, to me, my understanding of it is that we have a duty to pay good to everybody. If you must speak, don't speak in a way that causes harm. But if you have nothing to say, then just keep quiet.
Yep. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
If you have nothing to say that's going to be kind, just close it. Keep it quiet. And you seem to be the proponent of it, Willis. And that we thought, you see, this is why mathematics must be made compulsory as we go into selection. Because we thought that when we did the math, that 2022 plus 5 is 2027. According to the Constitution, every 5 years, an election will be held in the Republic of Kenya, upon which, and this will be the second Tuesday in August, upon which the people shall make their selection and members of parliament, etc., will be brought into office. So one would have expected that by the 9th of August 2022 that we would be expecting another election come the second Tuesday of August in 2027. You seem to think otherwise for some reason.
I'm a reverend lawyer.
Oh, Reverend.
That's what I do.
Yes.
And part of what I do is to specialize on elections. I read elections chapter every single day.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, the first fallacy that you must all remove from our heads to engage in this conversation is that there's a 5-year term granted to the office of president or member of parliament. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
There is nowhere in our constitution that guarantees or grants the president a 5-year term. And once you remove the 5-year term off your head, then you'll understand and interpret the constitution in your own way. And you'll come to the same conclusion. Article 142 of our Constitution tells us that the president shall serve in office from the date he is sworn in to the date when the person elected under Article 136 2A is sworn in. That is the term. It's not 5 years.
I need you to say that again.
Article 142 of the Constitution says, in terms of term of office of president,
Yes.
his term runs from the date he is sworn in
Okay.
to the date when the person elected under Article 136 2A is sworn in.
Okay.
That is the term. It's not 5 years.
Okay.
So we go back and check what Article 136 2A says. And Article 136 2A says that we shall hold presidential elections on the second, the words are this, on the second Tuesday in August in every 5th year.
Okay.
Basic understanding of that provision, number one, tells you again, confirms to you that there is no 5-year term. Because when you start the 5th year, when you are inside the 5th year,
You're actually finishing the 4th.
you have finished the 4th,
Yes.
then you enter the 5th.
Okay.
Now, inside that 5th year, look for the second Tuesday that falls in August. Inside the 5th year. And that second Tuesday that falls in August, inside the 5th year, conduct your presidential elections.
Okay.
Those are basic terminologies. But you must understand where most people are coming from. Previously in our constitution, section 9 of the then constitution was very explicit. It provided the president shall serve for a term of 5 years.
Yes.
He shall not serve for more than 2 terms
Yes.
of 5 years.
Yes.
It had given him exactly a 5-year term.
Yes.
And to contextualize what I am saying, and to tell you that Kenyans had actually practiced it before, Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in as president on the 9th of April 2013. The elections took place on the 4th of March 2013. At the time when the 2017 elections were being called, Uhuru Kenyatta had served for 4 years and 5 months as president.
By the time which year was coming?
The 2017 elections were called. It was 4 years and 5 months. He never served for 5 years. So the urban myth that there's a 5-year term guaranteed to the president does not exist. In fact, even in his second term, by the time he was sworn in for his second term, and the time when the 2022 elections were called, he had served for 4 years, 8 months, and a few days. So he never served for 4 years, 5 years. And you go back even to look at all our parliaments. The 11th parliament served for 4 years, 4 months at the time the elections were called. The 12th parliament served for 4 years, 9 months at the time elections were called. So where do Kenyans get this misconception, or legacy politicians get this misconception, that they are entitled to 5 years, kumi bila break? It doesn't exist.
Kumi yako, kumi yangu.
That is what was marketed.
That was what and just stuck.
Now,
Kumi, to get to kumi, you need 5.
Five.
Then you need 5.
So now, as the reverend lawyer, I'm spreading the gospel.
Please explain this. When you say reverend lawyer, what do you mean?
A reverend lawyer simply means that my duty is to enlighten the masses.
You're an evangelist.
I'm like an evangelist. I'm evangelizing what the Constitution says.
Okay. So it's like a child. By the time they are born, they're already living in their first year, essentially, is what we are saying, isn't it? You're living in your first year.
Yes.
So by the time you do, this is your you mark the completion of 1 year. Because you're not starting your first year by the time we say happy birthday to you as a child.
No.
You have completed your first year.
Exactly.
And so on year 1, day 1, you're actually living in your second year. That's the thing. You see why mathematics needs to be compulsory? We're adding like that. So what we're saying essentially is that by the time one is voted in, an election has taken place.
Yes.
On the 9th of August 2022, day 1 of William Ruto's presidency. Not the 9th of August. It's in September 20th when he was sworn in.
13th of September.
13th of September. So 14th of September of that 13th itself began day 1 of year 1.
No.
Okay.
When it comes to calculating the date of the elections, there are 2 things here. There's the term of office, separate provisions, and there's the election cycle. In terms of term of office is where we look at the swearing in as the starting point. But in terms of the election cycle, we look at Article 136, 2A. And Article 136, 2A tells you, look for the second Tuesday in August in every 5th year. So let's start from the last presidential elections. On 9th of August 2022. That 9th of August 2022 runs until 8th of August 2023. That is year 1. Year 2 runs from 9th August 23 to 8th August 24.
Okay.
That is year 2. Year 3 is 9th August 24 to 8th August 25. Year 4 is 9th August 25 to 8th August 26. And then the most important part, year 5 starts running from the 9th of August 26 to 8th of August 27. So for purposes of our constitution, we look for year 5, the fifth year. That fifth year runs from the 9th of August 2026 to the 8th of August 2027. Inside that fifth year, because we are told to conduct the elections in the fifth year, we look for the second Tuesday in the month of August. And that can only be 11th of August 2026. When somebody tells you to conduct your presidential elections on the 10th of August 2027, look at the calendar. 10th of August 2027 falls in the 6th year. So you are trying to form a government contrary to the manner that the Constitution provides, and that is treasonous. So any election that is held outside the 5th year is forming a government in a manner not contemplating the Constitution, and that's an act of treason. And we'll be asking if IEBC and William Ruto and others attempt to form a government outside the 5th year, that should be termed an act of treason and action be taken against them.
Who is supposed to pull up on that information and say, hang on, everybody, we've actually, exceeded the term?
What happens is this. Every Kenyan, because the Constitution is a document of the people, every Kenyan should read the Constitution, internalize it, and apply it. So at first instance, even media, they are Kenyans at the end of the day. They have a right to read the Constitution and form their opinion based on their reading of the Constitution. And anybody who reads this Constitution without political eyes will tell you the next elections have to be held in August 2026. We went into a 4-year election cycle. Our Constitution, if you look at the structure of our Constitution, it is heavily Americanized. The structure that was used to draft our executive and our governance was Americanized. That's why we went pure presidential system, not the hybrid system that is French or even the pure parliamentary system that is UK model, Commonwealth. We went to a bicameral parliament. That's American. You even go to parliament, you talk about House majority leader, minority leader. That's American. We went into a Supreme Court. In the Commonwealth, people have constitutional courts. We went into a Supreme Court. That's Americanized. So also when Kenyans said, we don't want December elections, it's interfering with our festivities. What the American consultants did was to simply bring the elections inwards, that do it inside the 5th year. What they guarantee you is a 4-year term in office.
Which is similar to the American term of office.
American term of office. So we need to, in a way, we need to recondition the mind away from what the legacy politicians have conditioned the mind to be, that they're entitled to 5-year terms. They are not. Their term in office is 4 years guaranteed. Then in the 5th year, we conduct elections.
It seems to me, though, that it's something that the IEBC then would be able to call out if you did this, and you're able to figure out that if you did the 12 calendar months from one period to the next, that you'd be able to figure that out. A whole year is a big difference, Willis.
You see, now there's a conspiracy of silence. And IEBC has been acquiescing to it. It's a conspiracy of silence, so that we all ride on the ignorance of the people.
But even at the silence, there is also a body that should be able to advise on this, which is the Office of the Attorney General, who's the chief advisor of the government with regard to understanding the law and applying the same. But then again, there is also some silence because this issue has been there for quite a while, but he has been silent. Or she has been silent.
Because it tells you what happens is, look at what it means. People have been comfortable in 5-year term. They are stealing from the Kenyan people an extra 1 year. Now you expect the Attorney General appointed by the President to give an advisory that shortens even our own tenure in office from the 5 years the President promised to a lesser period. No, they will not. They all wish we are all ignorant. They all wish we all accept it. And this has been going on for a long time. You imagine you are dealing with a mind that has been conditioned to a particular issue. And you are now trying to tell them, no, you need to open up your mind and read your Constitution and understand it, what it provides for.
Because
People are going to lose packs, man.
Because this entire conversation, it's pretty much on the election cycle and not term of office. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. But they will want you to discuss term of office.
Term of office.
But even term of office, as I've said, there is nobody guaranteed 5 years. In fact, the only person who has been guaranteed 5 years in the Constitution is the MCA, who in Article 177 4A was specifically told, you shall serve for a 5-year term. When the MCA in 2017 goes to court, because his election, by the time his elections were called, he had served for 4 years, 4 months. So he says, no, but the Constitution gives me a full 5-year term. What the court told him, yes, it gives you, but we are sorry. The same Constitution says your election must be held inside your 5th year with the other elections. So you are going to lose the extra months that you've not served.
Yeah.
And it's accepted. So why is it a problem when now we apply the Constitution in relation to the national executive?
Maybe they don't know, Willis.
They know.
Maybe they don't know.
I
Like, you've not done this math, sit down and done in the
telling-
thing. Maybe they're not aware that, okay, if we go until 2027, because we're just doing the math of 2022 plus 5 is 2027, right? Maybe they don't know this thing and they've not done the technical critical look that you've done. Possible?
No, let me tell you. If they didn't know, if they're using that traditional math, then the 2017 elections could have been held in 2018. Yeah. Ahmed Commission did the math the way I'm doing it, and it was August, 2nd Tuesday of August in the year 2017. That is when the 5th year fell. But conveniently,
They did it in March.
They started doing for us. They did it. The March was okay. March was okay. But conveniently for 2022, they decided to selling to us Kumi Bila, what
Bila
City
break.
is saying, that Kumi Yangu. So conveniently, we all start buying into 5-year terms. It is 5 year, 10 years, 5 years, 10 years. So now how do you calculate? 2022, 2027, 2027, 2032. And Kenyans have bought it.
But also remember, in the previous constitution, did give a 5-year term.
Yes.
So that is what we're
Maybe that's where, people just imagine.
It was easy to sell.
Yes, much easier because it is parliament, is the presidency. We actually forgot that it was not the president. We now had a presidency. And these subtle differences were lost on us. Parliament, we knew 5 years. So president, again, 5 years.
5 years.
Yes, exactly. Because that's what President Moi did, isn't it? And that was 10 years.
City, which begs the question, with this constitution that we have, the Constitution 2010, there seems as though the implementation of this document is being implemented by where it fits them best. It is not the full implementation of this document.
It's being implemented reluctantly.
Because it is when it comes to matters election, it is the election cycle.
There are those who argue that people who actually oppose the constitution are the ones who are in power now. So you tell me, how do you think they're going to implement something whose existence they opposed vehemently? How?
Will we be able to go beyond just highlighting this, Willis, that you've said that, okay, it should actually be done in 2026, August, and then, we're going to have a whole year before it could possibly be done. Will we? Will we be able to go beyond just the highlight like you've done?
In fact, what we are doing at first instance is to sensitize the people, to recondition them to now live by their constitution. And many Kenyans are now seeing the sense. They are doing their own math. They are all doing their own reading of the constitution. And they can tell that the next elections is August 2026. At a particular point, this matter will actually end up in court. We'll ask IBC once constituted to gazette the election date as per the constitution, which is August 2026. And we expect also the courts to deal with this issue if IBC is going to try to play games. But beyond it also, any attempt to hold elections in 2027 outside the 2nd Tuesday in August in the 5th year will be an attempt to form a government outside the law and will be an act of treason. And we will be seeking to have those who are participating in that act of treason to be held accountable. Because we have to accept either we live by our constitution or we put aside the document. Because something that is happening in Kenya which saddens me. Look at the 2/3 gender principle.
Yes.
A constitutional dictate that has been conveniently ignored now for 15 years. Forget even about elective officers. Even in appointive officers, we are seeing progressive erosion of this principle. Go to the question of boundaries. Why should Alego Usonga, where I come from today, has over 180,000 registered voters? Ruiru here has over 200,000 registered voters. Boundaries review was due 2 years ago.
Yes.
And it has not been done.
The
and
Attorney General said we don't have enough time.
No. It was due 2 years ago. It was due 2 years ago. As we are talking today, nobody is talking about giving equal representation to all people of Kenya by doing a boundaries review. So we are ignoring the Constitution. We are setting a template where the Constitution becomes a document of inconvenience. When it doesn't suit you, doesn't favor you, you
Toss
put it aside. And you go on with life.
You know, we had this same discussion earlier on with the guest who was here in the first hour of our discussions. And this issue of the general came in, yes, because I actually asked him why they were selective as members of parliament in the application of the Constitution. And he did try very valiantly to explain why. I said, but you see, it is clear that one is being partial with the interpretation of the Constitution when it suits them. Yes. Because if the Supreme Court said, Justice Maraga pronounced, we should disband Parliament because of this. Parliament should have been disbanded.
It should not be there until it meets the threshold.
Yes.
This is the thing, that we keep flirting with what maybe the Constitution says. You're not really going to make a decision. You're just kind of saying, okay, fine. That's what it says. It looks nice. You pat it on the back kind of thing. That's what we're doing. Flirting with the Constitution as opposed to implementing the thing, as people spent years going around gathering insights, gathering thoughts and opinions, and putting people to task in terms of how they felt the nation should be governed. Experts came and put their rubber stamp on it and said, this is the document. It was promulgated. Everybody said yes. But then it's still an idea in the minds of people that, okay, fine, it's a supreme law, but, we'll invite it, like you said, when need be. Other times we'll toss it out the window. But that's the problem, isn't it?
That's the big problem.
If your lawmakers are of that opinion that you can disregard the Constitution, this is a lawmaker of very high standing and says openly that, no, you have to look at circumstances. What circumstances?
You see, we're also dealing with a crop of lawmakers who can stand and say, for the first 2 years after the elections, the president is arranging things. Now we need to go to 7 years. When you hear them speak of that and then expect them to look at the election cycle dead on arrival.
You raise a very valid point, Dennis. If only the 7 years was not prefaced or was not connected to the 2-year hiatus a president, according to them, needs to be given. The discussion around the terms of the presidency is an important one.
Yeah.
Yes, but under those circumstances, no, that water is already muddied. So it can't even be a conversation that you're going to have, because someone is deliberately trying to say that according to their logic, this is how it should be. And essentially, we then throw away the purpose of the presidency and why we set those terms.
In the first place.
Yes.
We're going to go to a break, Wakili, but then here it is that we're asking the question. An IEBC is in the process of being reformatted. An IEBC existed, of course, but with the incoming commissioners, the chairperson, the vice, and all of this, then it will be given the boots it needs to essentially, go along these processes. Do you think that from the furthest in their minds is that an election is going to take place in 2027? That for all intents and purposes, the civic education, the voter registration that they're talking about, that's going to start now. And folks are going to be going into, elections for 2027. It's the farthest thing from their minds.
No. IBC is being funded every year.
Yeah.
IBC exists.
That's what I'm saying. It exists for all intents and purposes. What we're doing now is applying the commissioners and the...
bring the policy leadership.
Yeah.
And we need to start demanding of IBC. I know at least some parts of the country, the regional offices of IBC, they're doing the continuous voter registration. If you go to the regional office, you can get your registration as a voter. What we don't have is the mass registration of voters, which in the deal now we should push for that campaign to start now, because nothing stops the secretariat that is fully funded by the people, even today, to do their technical work. Registration of voters is their technical work. As we wait for the commissioners to be appointed, their technical work is going on. They're earning salaries. They're in office. Let them do that which they're supposed to do. Okay. But be that as it may, one thing we cannot run away from is that the legacy politicians will not wish IBC to be functional. In fact, they will try to sell to Kenyans that we don't even have an IBC. There is no time to hold elections next year. Let us wait for 2027. Even 2027 is too soon.
Yeah.
We can do it 2028. There was
So
Gen
that we can
Z
do other
demonstrations.
Crippler
Yes.
said 3
But they want to
years.
steal 1 or 2 years off Kenyans. Because what they're essentially doing is stealing sovereignty.
Yeah.
Because at election time, our sovereignty in Article 1 of the Constitution, sovereignty vests in the people. They can exercise it directly
Or indirectly.
or through democratically elected representatives.
Yes.
So what they're trying to do is to usurp the donation. The donation that was done on the 9th of August 2022 was for 4 years. Because after every 4 years, on the second Tuesday of August in the 5th year, we go back to reconsider our donation of sovereignty.
To these.
We select a new crop of people to exercise our sovereignty on our behalf.
Yeah.
The legacy politicians don't want that.
Unconstitutionally, when it comes to elections that should be held in the 5th year after the last election. And so now the question is, practically, if we were to say, okay, fine, actually, maybe there's the realization, it dawns on everybody, that we should actually bring this back 1 year from what is already planned in the minds, in the implementation of very many. That 2027 August is when the next election will be held. And according to what you're saying, it's a year beyond what should be constitutionally. What is the what practically can happen when it comes to now bringing everything back a bit? AG's already said, you know what, vote boundaries and all of this, we can't even do it because we don't even have enough time. We're just now trying to get chairperson and vice in place and the commissioners on board, and then have an IEBC functional by the end of May. And then you want to do voter registration, you only have about a year and a half to do that. Now we're saying that bring that back a year, giving everybody essentially less than 12 months to get all of these things done. Practical?
Very practical.
How so?
You know, the problem with Kenya is that we try to complicate things that are very simple.
Okay.
Elections in Kenya take place in a polling station. A polling station only has, at maximum, 600 voters. All we are talking about is organizing an infrastructure for 600 people to appear at a polling station and to vote. In some countries, people even vote using Bano. Marbles.
Yes, marbles. Gambia.
But in Kenya, we want to make it appear as a very complicated thing. You bring in technology, you bring in these technical terms, bombers of Kenya tallying process, just to undermine the sovereignty of the people. All we need, in fact, for me, the only concern that anybody should pay focus on is registration of voters. Get people into the electoral ecosystem, the voters. Once you register your voters, you know your polling stations, and a maximum per polling station is 600. I mean, 1 year is more than enough time. Chebukati was appointed commissioner in, I think, end of January, early February 2017. He did his elections in August of the same year. The infrastructure for elections exists anyway.
That's why you have a secretariat.
Yes.
But we don't have 61 billion yet. We need 61 billion to run the election.
Why do we have, out of that 61 billion, how much goes to setting up a Bomas Sterling Center? An infrastructure that is not needed. Bomas alone, in fact, as of my last check, that entire infrastructure for Bomas cost over 30 billion. From the results transmission system all the way to Bomas, almost 30 billion Kenya shillings. We don't need it. It is just an infrastructure that is superimposed on the people to undermine their will. As I've said, all we need is 600 maximum per polling station. Appearing, doing the account, aggregating the accounts at the constituencies, in their respective constituencies. There are only 290 constituencies. And each constituency declaring for us their results.
Yes.
And we can all do the math and declare our president. Simple.
Willis, as we speak right now, there is need for civic education for Kenyans to understand why the elections need to be held on August 6th. August 2026, right?
Yes.
But that is not happening. And the excuse that would be given is because IEBC commissioners are not in place. That notwithstanding, there is also the perception that we cannot do the delimitation of boundaries because AG says we don't have time. But the Constitution is not such that it says we cannot. The Constitution talks of must, shall, and may. Does the Constitution say we may fail to give boundaries because lack of time?
No, it shall. It's compulsory. We have to do it. But as I've said, the legacy politicians have conveniently decided there are certain parts of the Constitution they'll never touch. I'm asking the Kenyan people to draw a red line on the question of your sovereignty. We can live with and continue fighting on the gender issue. They've undermined our Constitution on the gender issue, and we need redress on that. We can live with and fight on the question of the boundaries delimitation. We can't do it. But when they start stealing your sovereignty, they want to add an extra 1 year to their terms in office. Then, that's the ultimate. To me, that's the ultimate warning. That is where you draw the red line and say, no, you are no longer just usurping the Constitution. You are now stealing my sovereignty as a person, as a member of this republic. That the Kenyan people must say no. And I'm inviting, it's good to see you invited me here today. I'm inviting media houses who are also citizens in this country. And they have legal departments, they have mathematicians, they have linguists, to also read the Constitution and form their own opinion. And say, our Constitution says elections will be held in 2026. So that what that will help with, media controls the narrative. What that will help is that it's part of opening up the minds of the Kenyan people to see that elections are actually 2026, and you will be able to remove from the minds the poison that the legacy politicians have planted on the masses of elections 2027. And you are an ambassador of hope. So I encourage our media houses across both social, mainstream, everywhere, on every platform, say it's election 2026.
You know what bothers me? Is that we look at a trend that began in earnest during President Uhuru's term, where he simply ignores court orders.
Yes.
Not even completely, just ignores.
Ignored it.
Now we are seeing the ramifications of it, because it then means people seem to feel that you can now take the liberty of ignoring the Constitution. If you ask me, an offense has been committed.
Yes.
You actually can't ignore the Constitution. You can't decide that you are ignoring it, that you're not going to go by it. That offense has already been committed. But it seems to be a process that is now being normalized. Now, the ramification of it is exactly terrible. When high officers in the land ignore the rule of law, you are giving everybody else in the country permission to ignore the law. And then you marvel and you wonder why it is the citizen is going about the business the way they are doing. It's like we now disrespect the law. Because we've taken it, this thing doesn't have to apply to us.
Not?
And I can do any crazy thing I want, and what the heck?
What I do?
And I think that's what then plays, I think that mentality is then, Will, it's what plays on our psyche when we now start to ask the question, well, okay, fine. You've brought it to light, and then we are burdened with that, and then begin to ask, but then, okay, Sawa, we know, what are we going to do? You see? And that's what affects the psyche of very many people. That is clear, and there's no question. Just looking at this and the way in which you spelled it out, it's very clear that this is going against what the Constitution has set forth, and that we've been in this practice then since 2013. Then perhaps we've got the wrong dates the whole time. That's clear. But that mentality that CT brings into question is what plays on our psyche, that we say, well, okay, fine. Court orders have been ignored,
look at
no
where it
problem.
manifests
We
in
don't
a
send capitation, no problem. We don't have no problem. And so we will also say here that somebody then is an authority for an extra year, and then we say, what? No problem. What are we going to do about it?
What I will say is this: we're in a reset moment as a country, and I give kudos to our young people for shaking up the political establishment. And if they continue on this trajectory, I believe the Kenyan people will get that which they deserve and that which they desire. So giving up is not an option. Throwing our hands in the air is not an option. We must continue with the agitation that our young people have led us to. An agitation that is about the common good of the people of Kenya and as guided by our Constitution. So if more and more Kenyans take up this conversation, and they demand that their constitution, in all spheres and shapes, to be respected, the legacy politicians will come and they'll be forced to heed to the demands of the people. But if they see that you are resigning yourself to fate, that you are giving up, that is the norm in the country, then that's the end of the country called Kenya. In some countries, they always look at what the military is saying. They say, go to Uganda, for example, with all its challenges. To them, a military man can even walk inside a courtroom and drag a suspect and detain him and refuse even to take him to court for a long time. It's accepted. They have said that is how life is in Uganda. And it is one thing that Kenyans should not allow. By resigning yourself to fate, that, okay, they are the people in power, they can do what they want. No. We must start calling them out. In fact, I'll ask Kenyans, these people who are underminers of the Constitution, we must start withdrawing social capital from them. When they come to a public gathering where you are, you turn your back on them. There are many ways of peaceful protest that you can start shunning them. You're in a school group with them, you remove them from the school group. Their kid comes to your school, your kids' schools, you tell your kids not to associate with their children. That social pressure that you are an outcast will ultimately force them to start understanding that what they're doing is not for the common good.
Because they wouldn't make the decision on their own.
Exactly.
Consider something that has been at the center of many discussions that we have. The debt issue we have in this country. Parliament have the prerogative and they have the ability and the mandate to raise the debt ceiling, meaning what we can borrow. It is within their purview. Now you tell me, we have a debt problem because we keep borrowing. And simple questions that are asked, debt to GDP ratio, where are we with this? Can we afford to keep borrowing when already, in simple arithmetic terms, no wonder they want to do it with maths.
I told you. I told you.
Math is a threat.
Yeah, math seems to be a threat because we are spending, is it 70% of whatever it is that we earn 70%. On debt? Now, surely, is this you in your household, you earn 100 shillings and you're spending 70 shillings to pay some debt. You have a house to pay for, you have food to eat, you have children who need to go to school, they need to be clothed. You need to do all these things. How on earth are you going to do it with 30 shillings? How? So you borrow some more and then you have to pay. So it doesn't stay at 70, it now becomes more than the 70. If you couldn't cope with the 30, how are you going to cope with less than 30?
And you see, it's a conversation that keeps on going on. And every other time, President says we have to borrow so that we are able to run our affairs. Begs the question, why can't we live within our means?
You're now in a debt trap. You are addicted to debt, and you cannot live without debt unless you gather the courage to open up your debt register, to find out where this money has been going. Because you'll find most of these audiences, as we've said, led by our party leader, Jim Wanjigi, most of it is odious, it's illegal debt. But it's supporting a Ponzi scheme here, where people are privately benefiting. So to them, the Ponzi scheme must continue. The Kenyan public must keep coming to the market to borrow illegally for them to keep earning interests and dividends of what they are selling as debt to the Kenyan people. So you need somebody who will have the conviction and the courage to say, I'm stopping this Ponzi scheme. And it's a labyrinth. It involves many players. Open it up and say, I'm not paying anything that was taken illegally. Because the Kenyan people, as demonstrated, are not able to continue carrying this burden.
Willis, you talk about money that has been taken illegally. Do you know there are some accounts that have been opened offshores for ETAs that have never gotten here?
Of course. In the Eurobond one, for example. No, it's true. Our constitution, just tying it back to what City was saying, our constitution requires that all revenue must be paid into the consolidated fund.
Yes.
All money is revenue, be it a loan, be it tax,
whatever,
goes into one fund. But we witness people going, when they take you to, for example, Eurobond 1, they went and opened
an
offshore accounts at JP Morgan. And it's not even the central bank governor that was on account, the personal signatory. That account was being managed by some guys from Treasury. an account called Accountant General and his deputy, are the ones who open an account. And from that account, now they start distributing midfielder. Send this year to Qatar, send this year to record this. So he was now operating his own parallel budget outside even parliamentary site. Auditor General has no sight of that account. Controller of Budget has no sight of that account. But he's doing things in the names of the Republic of Kenya and committing the Kenyan people to his own, what has become his private account. Why should we pay for that debt?
You know, when you think about it, and you look at the ramifications of some of these things that are done, the focus is on this particular government, but this nonsense began in the Uhuru era, in earnest. That's when it's like we decided we are going to accumulate as much debt as we possibly can.
It's a tradition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, this current administration is just continuing with that which they started during Uhuru's time.
Living it out.
The mess of this country must be squarely blamed on Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. We cannot discuss William Ruto in isolation of Uhuru Kenyatta. They were together when they started it. They messed up this country. William Ruto is continuing with it on his own. So it started in because when you talk about even the accounts I mentioned, the Eurobond one, that was in 2014.
Yes.
It was Uhuru in power. And we're talking of $1 billion Kenya shillings. I mean, $1 billion US dollars. Kenya shillings almost
was it
120
No.
billion.
You
It was
talk
2
about the first
billion.
one.
It was 2 billion. The first one was 2 billion.
Yes.
1 billion they can account for.
Yes.
But 1 billion US dollars comfortably sitting in an account in Qatar. A private account. And it is these people who open this offshore account that have been managing the distribution of this money.
Truly, Willis.
Truly. Raila Odinga in 2014, just that people memories are short. In 2014, when Raila Odinga demanded from Henry Rotich, the then CS Treasury, to make public, to share with him information on the 2 Eurobonds,
Yes.
he was given documents. They were published on the Treasury website that could explain and account for $1 billion US dollars. Plus EFT forms were supplied. For 1 billion, the other 1 billion, they supplied EFTs that were redacted. Those are the EFTs that somebody was transacting from JP Morgan to an account in Qatar without the money landing anywhere in our consolidated fund. Why should we keep quiet? Why should a party government pay for that? And the Kenyan people must reject this debt. This is not our debt.
But this is the thing that I'm talking about, that we sit almost comfortably in this abyss, or this cesspool of nonsense.
We actually don't sit comfortably, no. We sit uncomfortably.
But we're still
but we
sitting
do nothing.
inside.
Just
we
quiet.
seem accustomed to the discomfort.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. That there seems to be no wall. That it's never enough. It's not enough. Election outside of the year prescribed by the Constitution, $1 billion that could have lifted Kenya significantly out of some kind of economic retrogression. We are okay with it.
Now
Now
you have got it, because look at the spiraling effect. Because you look at the genesis and then you look at what else has come in,
and you just keep gathering things as you go.
It's a multi-headed hydra. It began as, some reptile.
Yeah, so this is, and it goes back to the question, Willis, that if you can have $1 billion, my God, $1 billion today is 129 billion shillings.
Yes.
If it can just,
yes, and it, yes,
and we're just like, oh, okay.
Then
an election held 1 year out of the thing will be like, okay, that's nothing. If we are comparing, do you see what I'm saying?
I get you, but I'm telling you, I draw my inspiration from our young people. Before, people were ignorant. This kind of information was not readily available.
Yeah.
How long did it take, for example, from even for Kenyans to understand what debt is and to understand the consequence of debt in their lives? Before, we always assumed that is just government organizing itself, government will always borrow. But now they're questioning. Even our parliament didn't even understand what debt is. Even when they were asked always to raise the debt ceiling, they didn't know what they were raising. They were just because you've been told to make it 11% of
okay, they would all say
aye. But now, the conversation has changed. We are not discussing tribe anymore. We are now discussing governance. We are discussing economy. So, and I say, our young people opened our eyes as a people. And the test of this, whether it means something, will be when elections are called. when we are held, not even called, when elections are held, that we are going to witness the real Fagia water elections in this country. All these people, legacy politicians who are responsible for the mess, they'll all be swept away. It will be a reawakening moment for the people of Kenya. If only we hold elections and we elect the same characters, then I'll say all is lost. But if I witnessed, based on what I witnessed last year and the conversation that I keep following in all platforms where our people are meeting, and this irrespective of tribe, irrespective of age, demographics, people are all discussing common good issues, mwananchi issues.
Right.
Nobody is saying that I'm ODM Damu, I'm UDA Damu. No.
Yeah.
In fact, they've put all of them together. They are dealing with our common good as a people.
Yes.
If the conversation, the momentum is maintained, we'll get that which the Kenyan people desire.
How do we get this conversation and momentum to these officers that should make a decision, like the judiciary to make a decision? When are we highly likely to see this headed to court? Because sooner rather than later.
In terms of the court process, I'll say that we've had certain progressive judgments coming from the courts, and especially at the High Court, Court of Appeal level. It's high time the Supreme Court also feels the pressure and start giving strong policy directions on these things, issues that are emerging. And when, for example, we look back on the question of the unconstitutionality of Parliament, the CJ and the Supreme Court need to come out strongly and declare Parliament unconstitutional. Cause the crisis. Because you had more than 15 years to comply with the Constitution. You have not complied with it. Why should we accommodate that Parliament? So we need some strong positions to emanate from the Supreme Court and the CJ in particular to send an ultimate warning that the Constitution is supreme to any other institution. I will not say that the other courts, if I look at what the courts, High Courts, Court of Appeal have said in terms of upholding the Constitution, in most instances they've gotten it right. And even when there was threats or perceptions of threats that will come from the executive, what they have not done yet, which I hope soon we should get there, is start sentencing people to imprisonment. Those who have disobeyed the Constitution and court orders, at least of the ones who have appeared so far that have been summoned and honored them, they've left with warnings, their contempts have been purged. But very soon we should now move to the next stage, sentence them to prison, 6 months.
It'll punish them for what they've done,
yeah,
but
they
at the
should be
same,
punished.
it will set a precedent for those who then would
what
be dipping their fingers in the cookie jar or at least behaving, interestingly. But then here we are asking the question that oftentimes we ask, and that's what we try to do with these conversations that we have, that we must be pointed towards a solution. And that's towards, or many solutions that lead to one big thing, Wakili. So you've given some insights here in terms of what can you do as an individual coming together, mushrooming into units and then into communities. That what can you do when you look at these injustices in the face, and what is our then responsibility? You talk about, calling people out regularly, saying that this cannot happen. In which forums do you find them? I'd like to hear from you. Lastly, what is something that you can do today about this that we're talking about, whether it is an election which is out of time and term against the Constitution, or it's 130 billion shillings essentially that has been stolen and we're aware of it? What can you do in your capacity as an individual coming together with others?
Two main things that I'm focused on at the moment. First is the litigation, where we must get court orders that uphold our Constitution. So we are doing and supporting several cases, and we are part of some of those cases, that speaks, for example, on public debt as an issue. And we want the courts to find that Kenyans don't have a responsibility to pay for odious debt. Any debt that is taken that is illegal, that did not follow the laws of Kenya, should not be paid by the people of Kenya.
Okay.
It should be paid by the people who took it. Hiyo ni shida yao. We are also part of this. We've gone to the Supreme Court on the question of elections date. And we want the Supreme Court to tell us why elections can not be held in 2026. And if anybody attempts to hold elections in 2027, we're asking the court to find it to be an act of treason. It's trying to set up government outside the Constitution.
Hear you.
We are also involved in raising civic action.
Yeah.
Our conversation, we are carrying it across the entire country on different platforms. So that we want an empowered citizen. All this cannot be achieved if the citizens themselves are not empowered. They are not aware. So we want to engage with an empowered citizen. Because in the citizenry is where our hope is.
There we go.
If we do not have an empowered citizenry, even the question that we are raising in court, the questions about public debt, if they are not empowered, they'll go back and make the same mistakes, electing the same legacy politicians, and you start again
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
And that's a good place to start.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.